Hi, this is my lecture about forest surveys and monitoring and week 5 of topics in tropical Asian forestry. So this week you're going to be starting your projects, and I'll be discussing that a little bit and giving you some general comments about what I expect and what to be thinking about. I am being intentionally vague here. I kind of want you to think on your own. A lot of people have done lots of different kinds of surveys. They're basic survey approaches and so forth, and I've given you some references for those. But I really kind of want you to go out and just look around and think in this first phase. Like, it's mainly reconnaissance, exploring the place that you're choosing to survey, and try to quantify the habitats that are there. This doesn't have to be extremely precise. It is not extremely precise. I want you to go out there and try to get a feel for the place and think about the habitats, and again think about it from the perspective of your chosen organism, whether it's plants or ants or whatever. Think about what makes a habitat for your animal. Probably some of you have quite a bit of experience with this already, but try to define your habitats. And again, it's kind of a process of where you're going to narrow down your definitions. You go out there with kind of some vague idea of what a habitat might be, and then you start thinking about how to describe it. What could you capture in a simple photograph to define that habitat that would help another person understand it. And this isn't the end. I mean, this is just a pilot project, a way to get you out there to start thinking about how to do this. We're not going to be limited to photographic techniques. I want you to focus on that right now to, what's a way to visually, digitally capture these habitats. Use your imagination, be creative about it, but do try to be rigorous as well. Try to really define habitats. And again, we were discussing how many should you have. 4 or 5 is plenty, I think. We're going to go back to these later in phase 2 of this survey, and I'll be putting up instructions soon about what you'll be doing. But again, I'm not going to lay down, precise ground rules. I really want you to figure this out. I mean, there is no definite right answer for these things, and I want you to have an open mind and kind of put the challenge onto you for the moment to think about this. Do keep track of your time as you're doing this, how much time you spend on each step, versus trying to capture one habitat. Just keep track of your time as you go along, and you'll be surprised sometimes which steps take a lot of time and which ones need to be made more efficient. Even which things you're actually not getting that much more information, but you're spending a third of your time doing this little bit, and so maybe it's not really necessary. So pay attention to those efficiencies, because those are major limited resources that we have for monitoring forests oftentimes. And so if you can kind of maximize the efficiency, it will definitely be a lot better. So in this project of near sensing your local environment, the first phase is fairly coarse. Again, I want you to have a general understanding of the habitats and how much of each habitat there is in the place that you're studying. We're not trying to really go out and get precise measurements yet. Define them as objectively as possible and estimate how much of the area is composed of each habitat that you identify. Later on, we're going to be trying to upload these, into data sharing platforms. So do keep organized. Take good notes. So if you're georeferencing your photographs, keep a notebook and be writing things down. Keep track, from this photo number to that photo number. I was taking pictures of these kinds of things in this habitat, and so forth. And you'll improve your definitions as you go along. And I want you to go back and look at your photographs later on. Did you capture what you thought you were going to capture? Did you capture it effectively, or do you need to try it some other way? So we're going to be continuing to use these things. So this is not kind of a one-off thing, and you're going to put these away. We're going to probably upload these to Picasa and try to use Google Fusion tables we'll figure out what technique is best. do make sure you're georeferencing things. If you do have a GPS unit or a georeferencing camera, that's a great thing. You'll need to make sure you're synced up. If you got a GPS unit, just making notes of what photos relate to which waypoints and that sort of thing. If you don't have a GPS unit or a smartphone or something that will do this automatically, georeference a few landmarks of the place you're going. As you're going, you may kind of note, oh, you'll probably be able to see this intersection of the trail with the bigger road or something. You'll be able to see this on Google Earth. Try to make note of where those landmarks are and how far away you are. And if you're having to rely on those kinds of measurements, you might need something like a little drag line. Cut you a 50-meter rope or have a 50-meter measuring tape, and just as you walk along, kind of note, how many 50 meters did you travel from that landmark. And you can just kind of drag it out behind you, and as the end passes some landmark that you noted, okay, that's 50 meters more, and you can kind of measure roughly that way. And you'll be good to have a compass in that situation as well. You might want to keep track of which direction you're going as you move along. But as long as you have several points georeferenced, with landmarks and things, I think that's probably adequate. We won't fuss about that too much right now if really you're kind of limited by this technology, by access to the technology. So if you do take snaps with your smartphone, make sure you are getting that georeference data. Not all of the cameras out there, not all the camera apps do have these kind of automatic georeferencing protocols, and so you need to make sure that photo does have that georeference data associated with it when you download it onto your computer or you upload it into Picasa. So also, smartphone, if you're using a smartphone but you want to use a video recorder that's much better quality or something, you can use the smartphone to kind of snap images of, okay, here's where I am, and then start videotaping, and so then you can link those two things up. And so basically you're creating waypoints, digital waypoints with your camera that are georeferenced, and then your other material, your other data collection does not have to be georeferenced. You just need to have something that it can be synced with. Even digitally is not a bad way to do it. And I've even done things, you can videotape the camera, or even like the location. So if you've got a GPS unit and a video recorder, you can videotape the location, and it's actually there. It's with the thing that you're videotaping, and you don't have to go back and do it later. And, think about those kinds of things. So if you can just simply snap an image of some information so that it's digitally associated with those files that you're taking, you don't necessarily have to then later go back and make sure your notebook, you've got those numbers. You can actually just have them in sequence. I used to do that with my herbarium specimens a lot. I would take a picture of the label, and then all of the subsequent photographs of a specimen were associated with that label. And so as long as your photographs were in the right order, in your file names keep that order, you can just simply use, okay, each label is a place marker for the subsequent specimens. And so you could do that same kind of thing with your waypoints, with your digital waypoints. You could just take a picture of your GPS unit and then the subsequent photographs until the next GPS point would be associated with the previous waypoint. Those kinds of things, very simple techniques, but they can save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle of trying to link them up later. If things happen, you come back from the field and suddenly you've got 2 days of work that you're trying to do, and you don't actually get back to your notebook as quick as you thought, and maybe you didn't take as good of notes as you thought. And it is good to take good notes, but I know things happen. You don't get all of the information that you thought, and so it gets away from you. Anyway, I think it's good to try to link things up digitally with your camera if you can. I do have some more instructions on the Piazza, and I'm going to be putting up the instructions for the Phase 2. Got a lot of reading there. It's on the Class Resources tab. If you go to the Piazza, there's a Class Resources page, and I'll try to make it a little bit more obvious, and I'll organize those more later today. So if there are better papers for your group, I'm not an expert. I'm a botanist. I'm not an expert on insects or amphibians or something. So if you know of better papers that talk about forest survey techniques or rapid assessment techniques, please let me know, and I'll share that with the rest of the class. Share it with the rest of the class yourself. You don't wait for me to do it. Just please pitch in. That'd be great. And discussing a little bit about phase 2, and it's kind of, now we're going to try to use our belts and our plots or traps. I mean, you might have access to a digital recording, audio recording device, and I know there are a lot of models out there, and we'll be using them in the field next summer. But if you have access to one, you might set up a trap, an audio trap or a camera trap. If you have those available, that would be kind of interesting and a thing to try. But we'll mainly be measuring things in belts or plots, some kind of fixed area. But we'll be structuring those according to the habitat surveys. And so I'll be putting instructions up about how to do that. Again, I think you need to have gone through the phase 1 to really get a handle on what kinds of things you can measure in phase 2 and how best to measure them. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time describing exactly what you should do, how you should put your plots and things. That, again, depends on your organism, and it depends on the habitat types you have and how they're distributed. And I'll be making a short video after this one. We're just kind of talking about forest survey techniques and what you need to keep in mind in different approaches, and what is stratified random sampling. I'm sure you've probably all heard that term. I'll go over it a little bit and kind of explain what I mean when I say stratified random sampling. But I do think it's kind of necessary for you to get through phase 1 before I give you a great deal of detail about phase 2. I know a lot of you are eager to know what exactly is the purpose of these forest surveys, but I really want you to go out there with a kind of an open mind on the phase 1 and thinking about how to do this on your own. And kind of the reason I've done this, I was given some advice by an advisor, David Peart. He's a professor at Dartmouth College, and this was when I was going out to do these surveys in Kalimantan in the selectively logged forest, and right before I left to go do the work, we were talking about it, and we've been talking about, what exactly, point quarter systems, what kind of transect should I use, and belt widths, and everything. And, he said, once you've kind of mastered this stuff and you really kind of have the concepts under your belt of like what you're trying to measure and so forth, and you've thought about it a lot, it's kind of step back and think about it. Try to think about the subject as if no one has ever thought about it before. Try to be fresh. Try to think about it in your own way. And I think that's really good advice. I mean, you oftentimes reinvent the wheel, but I think at this stage it's kind of okay to be reinventing the wheel. The wheel, this is a pretty simple project, and the wheels are pretty simple, and so we probably all will kind of come to the same conclusions, and that's kind of a gratifying thing to see, oh, I thought about this, and hey, these guys who have been doing this for 50 years, Greek Smith, the textbook I gave you, hey, I kind of have the same observations, I have the same insights now that I've been out there and looked around, and that can be very gratifying as well. And so I encourage you to challenge yourself, to really think about it as if no one's ever thought about it before, and you're really trying to discover these techniques. It's a good way to challenge your creativity and your own way of thinking about these questions. So I'm going to wrap up this video right now, and I'll come back later with another one. Thanks.